Okay, so we have our choice of sorting, and then we just bind the item source to our employees. Yay! So now we can filter the employee list by the selected department. If we go back to our all departments, it doesn't add that extra sorting. It just skips over that, and we just return all the employees. Okay, now we're not quite ready yet because there was also a event handler added there. So I'm gonna jump forward a couple steps here and add the rest of this code all in one operation. Okay, I could leave that there for late night reading if I'm bored one night, but instead I'm not going to. Just check my indentation level here. Okay. So these are those other missing event handlers that I talked about. Now some of these aren't quite ready to cook yet because they refer to other objects I haven't created yet, but I think I should be able to build at this point. Maybe not though, let me just see. Yeah, I can build, right? It means I'll actually get some errors when I go to run it, but at least it builds. So let's talk about what I added in this code now. So we had everything up to show data. That was all good. Okay. So in the XAML, it referred to a selection changed event, right? In other words, this is when I pick a name, touch an employee name in the list, right? That causes the selection changed event to fire because I'm selecting an employee. Okay. So this is just in here as a catch-all, just in case for some reason, I don't know, I was doing something else and it misinterpreted my selection. I'm not sure, but I saw this code in other samples, so I used it myself. Never was able to actually get this to mean anything or do anything, but it's probably a good idea to have it there. If no customer is selected, just return, right? That will just jump out of this event handler and we're done, because there is nobody selected. So assuming there is somebody, then we'll go on in our code further. So again, we just grab that reference to the app object. Okay, we set the active employee in the app object. So that's where we're taking advantage of this global aspect, the visibility of the app object being available everywhere. And we're saying, okay, you selected this employee in the list. So I'm going to copy that employee and store it as the active employee in my app object. So that happens in this little bit of magic that I just grab the selected item out of the employee list as employee, right? And then store that as the active employee. We can do this as because it's bound to the employees, right? That's already taken care of in the binding. So it knows that every list item is supposed to be an employee. So I just say, yeah, give me that list item, but give it to me as an employee. It is. It is. But because it's not technically, notice I didn't have to put employee in brackets in front, because I don't really have to cast it because that's the kind of object it is. It's more like an anonymous type, really, than a cast. The list item is an anonymous type in this sense, just holding, hey, that's what I am, is I'm an employee today, right? Okay. Then the active department, of course, before I go on to work with it, I probably want to know that or keep track of that as well, because that's just whatever is currently selected in the drop-down list up top, right? And there we go. So I store the active department. And then this is what I'm going to do then. I'm going to go to a details page. We talked about that earlier. Probably what we want to do is when we touch an employee in the list is we want to go see all the details. Because all we're displaying right now is that summary information, right? But I don't actually see the start date or the salary or anything else in the list. I want to go see all the details and maybe even change them, right? Edit the record. Okay, so we'll navigate to an employee details page, which I haven't created just yet. Okay. Now this is some plumbing for navigation, right? Unnavigated to, unnavigated from. I think we'll talk more about that when we get the other page in place. But basically it's just a matter of when we come back here, we want to make sure that we submit any changes, right? And then we set our drop-down list back to whatever our active department was, so it doesn't look like we've changed the filter. We're maintaining the filter throughout the process of looking at an employee's details and coming back. Again, we just make sure we save changes before we leave the page, if there were any outstanding changes. This is kind of some safety stuff, you might say. And of course, if we actually have selection changed on the department list picker, right? All we have to do is now we put all that smarts of the filtering into one show data method. We just call that whenever we select a new department out of the drop-down list. And that's basically it. The only thing left is, remember we added that little taskbar button at the bottom? Just a little plus sign on it, right? Well, here's the click event of that taskbar button. The idea here is, looking ahead, is I might want to add a new employee. So there's other ways to do this, but this is the first way that occurred to me, and it's always worked. It's just create a new employee object. This is totally an object-oriented design. So it doesn't, it's a common approach. It's similar to the code we used in our controllers for MVC. Right? If you're going to add one, we would use the model binder to create a new employee or whatever, right? Whatever the model was, with data coming in from the form, and then we would just add that to the collection of the DB set. So it's a similar idea here. I'm just making a new employee. Okay, employee, new employee equals, right? And I'm initially giving it an ID of 0, but we don't have to worry about that. When I actually save changes, AutoSync will look after giving it a real ID once it actually has generated one in the system. But in the meantime, it's kind of helpful for me to identify that this is a new employee because the ID is still 0, right? So we just make a new empty employee, ID is 0. One other thing that I found I had to do, I went back and added this because it didn't seem to work well without it. It has to have a department. Foreign key is not null, right? So there actually had to be a department in the employee. So what I did is I added code here to grab the department out of the department list picker, right? And then cast that as department. So just assign a department. Doesn't matter which one, the user can change it. But I just chose the first one in the list, right? Okay. And then we just are setting the active employee to this new employee, this phantom one that I've just created that's mostly empty except for a 0 for the ID, and it has a department assigned. And that way, when I navigate over to the same employee details page, I can check the code. If it comes in with the active employee having an ID of 0, then I'll know this is supposed to be a new employee. I've got to add this one, as opposed to just editing an existing employee. So I can make that decision once I land on the employee page, right? Okay. So I think I don't get build errors, so we can try running this so far, and we should be able to see our filtering going. And there we are. Now I have my, ooh, look at that. That's a little better than just a black screen with the 5 names showing and so on. Gives me a little bit of animated drop-down list effect and so on. So I can select human resources, for example, and now very quickly I can see all the employees here are in the human resources department, right? Just for fun, we'll try information systems. These are, and of course, see, it's a much shorter list than what I had a minute ago. I can go back to all departments, right? Much longer list because everybody's there. So that's good, right? I have my filtering working and so on. Mind you, if I click on one of these now, we'll click on Betty Brown. Okay. Navigation failed. Well, it's because I tried to go to my employee detail page, but I haven't made it yet. So that would be the next thing. But I'm going to stop now at this point. In fact, I have 30 seconds till I have to stop anyway. And we'll pick it up from here, right? But I wanted to at least finish this. That's the end of my code in my little code file I gave you so far anyway. So later on, we'll actually add the employee page, or maybe I'll do it after a break. I'm not quite sure. And we'll see, because I really want to introduce that other main concept, why the heck we need a view model as opposed to just a model. But we'll save that for after the break.